Competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Has changed again, but the question is, can our Red Dragon Archfiend deck keep up? Subscribe. So the UK finally got a YCS announced in Birmingham for February 7th, the exact same day as the new Blue Eyes structure deck hits our shelves. This is going to be our last send-off to Red Dragon Archfiend before moving on to the next season of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Properly, so I'm going to do all that I can to try and top with this deck. In our most recent profile, we introduced Ascator Dawnwalker alongside the new Primera Primus and all the new combos that came with these additions. I also said if we get 1,000 likes on that video, we'll make a more complex one where we navigate all the different interruptions, and the demand was there. So we're going to document our process of adapting to the metagame all the way up until YCS Birmingham. We'll go in depth with meta matchups nearer the YCS, as we'll be in a very different format by then with the release of crossover breakers and whatnot. So today we're going to focus on dealing with generic interruptions, do some test hands, and cook up some lines through those interruptions. Wait, did he say cooking? That's funny, because this video is sponsored by HelloFresh. It's that time of year where shops and supermarkets are absolutely swarming with people. You really want to do your grocery shopping in that? Absolutely not. Well, with HelloFresh, you can get your entire week of fresh ingredients and meals delivered straight to your door, ready for you to cook up a storm in the kitchen. Even if you're not much of a chef, all your meals come with an easy-to-follow recipe card, so just do what it tells you, and you'll have a beautiful dish made by yourself. God, you're so talented. The menu of meals to choose from is super diverse as well, so it doesn't matter if you follow a certain diet type, HelloFresh has you covered. Just choose your restriction on the website, choose your meals, and that's pretty much it. I love it. I definitely recommend you try it at least once, especially with this banging deal we've got here. You can click the link in the description, you can scan the QR code on screen, or you can even just use my code REVSNOV10 and receive 10 free meals and free breakfast for life. That's one breakfast item per box while your subscription is active in the US. The link and code are valid in all countries though, and the respective local discount will apply. It's a good deal, man, so give it a go, and thanks again to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Alright, I want to try and make this as digestible and informative as possible without waffling too much, which is gonna be hard, man, but we can make it work. We're gonna start by dividing the video into multiple parts, covering most of our base combos, summarizing which interruptions hurt that specific combo, and showing you the lines to play through the others. All the interruptions that we are going to be covering in this video are basically just the ones that you expect to see, the common ones right now. So Fuwalos, Perulia, Impulse, Shifter, Droll, Nibiru, Ogre, Ash, Veiler / Imperm, and I guess we can throw Bell on the end as well. Yo, accidental Bell end joke. Didn't even mean that, dude. But yeah, we are going to start off with just the standard Soul combo, and then you'll get an idea of the kind of format of this video going forward. There will be plenty of timestamps in the description for you to play with, so you can skip to a certain point if you need to. So let's just get into it. Okay, so visually, here's how we're going to do this. If an interruption hard stops the combo, it's going to turn red. If we still end on a good board past that interruption, it's going to go green. And then if it does kind of negatively impact our end board, but isn't the end of the world, it'll turn orange. So starting off with our one-card combos is going to be relatively easy here because they are one-card combos. There's no extenders in hand in theory, meaning pretty much all the sort of one-for-one interactions are, of course, going to stop the combo. Going for the full Soul combo also on its own just gets cooked by Shifter and Nibiru. You could, in theory, just set up Scarred plus Red Zone to play around Nibiru, but you'd essentially just be throwing games if they didn't actually have the Nibiru. When it comes to Droll, if you have to search for Soul to start your plays with something like Stone Sweeper, you get absolutely cooked, but if you start with Soul on its own, you are still able to at least set up an Abyss or a Supernova. So kind of a weird one to grade, but we'll give it an orange. And then finally for the Molcharmies, well, let me show you. Okay, so starting off with the likes of Fuwalos, the idea is that you want to set up an interruption or interruptions while giving your opponent minimal draws, right? And with just Soul, it really depends on when they activate the Fuwalos. For example, if they activate it in the draw phase to play around something like talents, there's actually some reasonable plays that we can make. However, there is a choke point where they can just drop this and it completely turns off everything. So for example, we normal summon Soul, we go Soul effect, we add Bone, we go Bone effect to special summon, we go Bone effect target Soul, dumping a Crimson Resonator to reduce Soul's level to 2, and then from there we would continue on with the combo, right? If they drop Fuwalos here, as we're about to go into Red Rising Dragon, there's nothing we can do. It's too many draws for us to be able to set up any kind of interruption, so Fuwalos would just completely stop the turn there. However, if our opponent drops Fuwalos in the draw phase, we could normal summon Soul, Soul effect add Bone, Bone effect to special summon. If we wanted to, it's worth noting that we can give our opponent 0 draws and still get access to an interruption, because Bone could dump Vision to add Crimson Gaia, and then Crimson Gaia could add, for example, Fiendish Golem, without us having to go into the extra deck, and then we have Fiendish Golem as an interruption, and our opponent is -1 card in hand. But that involves playing Fiendish Golem, which isn't necessarily optimal, unfortunately. So if we return once again to this point here, we just special summoned Bone. We have a tuner and a non-tuner. If our opponent activates Fuwalos here, out of fear of us going into the extra deck, we're then able to activate the effect of Bone, dump in Vision to add Gaia, activate Gaia adding Red Zone, and then we can at least have a Red Zone with a Scarred on the field, meaning our opponent gets a draw, but we also have Red Zone Gaia Scarred set up, plus hopefully like hand traps in hand if all we have is Soul. So ultimately with Fuwalos, it all comes down to when our opponent decides to drop it. Overall, I would probably put this in the orange category unless our opponent knew exactly what they were doing and dropped it on the dumping of Crimson. Then it's red. Now moving on to Perulia, getting a draw every time we summon from hand. This is a lot more interesting because we give our opponent draws very early on in our combo. For example, normal summon in Soul, our opponent draws a card. We add Bone, we activate the Bone effect to summon, and our opponent gets another draw. For the standard full Soul combo into the Centurion line, we would give our opponent 1 more draw, and I think 3 draws for the end board is maybe a bit too much. So I think it's probably best if we did something like Bone effect, target Soul, dumping the Crimson, reducing Soul to level 2. We then synchro these 2 into the Red Rising. Red Rising brings back the Crimson Resonator. And then Crimson, we have 2 options here. We could Crimson summon double Vision, and then make Supernova, add Crimson Gaia, add Red Zone. So we essentially end on Supernova plus Red Zone. Or we could go the standard route and summon Vision plus Synchron off of the Crimson Resonator. Summon out our Scarred as we usually would. Vision would trigger, getting us a Crimson Gaia to hand. Scarred plus Synchron would go into the Abyss. Of course, channeling 1 Scarred, channeling 2 Synchron, adding back to Vision as usual. We summon out the Red Dragon Archfiend. And this is where we would go Dispatter and then summon Vision from hand into the Centurion line. I don't think it's worth giving our opponent an additional draw. So we probably just either make Dispatter, which wouldn't be live unless we had Fiendish Golem, or we could just Crimson Gaia add Red Zone here and set the Red Zone. So we essentially have Abyss plus Red Zone. And of course, we would have to banish the Soul in the end phase as well. So yeah, Perulia is like relatively okay on just the Soul combo. We'll probably mark that as orange as well. So yeah, for Soul on its own, if your opponent doesn't have any hand traps, you probably win the game. But if they do have any kind of hand trap, then you better pray that you have good interruptions in your hand. Now let's move on to the 1-card Centurion combos. Okay, so the 1-card Centurion combos are like on the complete opposite side of the spectrum compared to just Soul. Also, this does not include Ascator because the Ascator combos are like completely different, so that'll be a separate section. There's also many different ways you can sequence this combo, like using your normal summon and stuff, but I think the one I just showed you is like the most resilient. In terms of cards that do completely shut this combo down, assuming you have no other extenders or anything, Imperm, Impulse, and Ghost Ogre are going to be the ones to do it. Nibiru and Bell literally do nothing, and then Ash Droll, Fuwalos, and Perulia don't really do a whole lot either. Like, you're able to set up Legatia Pop without giving your opponent any draws, and then Droll and Ash basically just force you into Legatia Pop. Shifter's a weird one because if you have Oath, it doesn't matter, but if you have Stand Up, you can't do anything, so it's green or red, we'll make it orange. Overall, pretty resilient. You definitely want to see a Centurion starter in your hand, that's for sure. But speaking of Centurion starters, let's move on to the Ascator 1-card combo. Similar to the other Centurion starters, the Ascator line also gets stopped by Impulse, Imperm, and Ogre, but also Ash, so it's like slightly worse. Bell again does nothing, but the rest of these interruptions do actually change the way we play. Okay, so when it comes to Droll, Nibiru, and Fuwalos, the line is going to be the same for all of those, although when it comes to like Fuwalos and Droll, you're playing reactively, whereas with Nibiru, you would probably be doing it in a Nibiru heavy format, assuming your opponent has Nibiru. But yeah, for that line, we are going to start with the Ascator, discarding the Veiler to special summon itself, and of course, the Ascator from the deck. So Fuwalos and both Perulia both get a draw on the effect of Ascator. So both of those will be activated pretty much at the start of the turn. You could play Gamma in that case, actually, which is funny. But yeah, you summon these two, and then we would Synchro into the Primera Primus. This would be the second and final draw on Fuwalos. And of course, we grab a copy of Emblema Oath, which opens us up to Droll here as well. That is 3 summons so far, and we need access to the field spell to play on our opponent's turn. We're under Droll, so we can't search, meaning with the Emblema Oath, we're going to have to set the field spell. Then we can activate the field spell, and the effect of the field spell, discarding a card to place a Trudea. Trudea effect to summon, that's summon number 4, and then Trudea effect to place, placing the Primera. This sets us up for a Legatia on our opponent's turn with Primus in graveyard and Primera protecting us from card effects. It's like kind of mid into a Fuwalos because all we have is Legatia, 2 cards in hand, plus a draw, and our opponent essentially got a +1. But with just Ascator, there's unfortunately no way around it because they get the draws off of the bat, so you pretty much just have to commit to it at that point. At least in this case, we do play around Nibiru, and then Droll also forces us into this kind of position as well, because we can't add off of Oxala or anything. So yeah, we'll say orange for Fuwalos because it's kind of mid. We'll say green for Droll because we're playing reactively, and then probably orange for Nibiru because we have the ability to play around Nibiru with this kind of line. However, if we had free reign, we probably wouldn't have went for this line. I don't know. I guess you can just kind of like make the read, right? All right, the line for Perulia is slightly different. Our opponent is going to get a draw, but then because we're playing reactively, we can model the line around it, still get to our Centurion combo, and essentially set up what we would be setting up through the Perulia without giving any additional draws. So yeah, starting with the Ascator, discarding a card, that's going to be our opponent's one and only draw in this combo line. Synchroing these two into the PP. Effect is going to get us to the Emblema Oath. We'll activate the Oath, and we will still place the Trudea here. Trudea effect to summon. Trudea effect to place itself and the Gargoyle. We'll go Gargoyle effect to summon itself as a level 4. Synchro with the PP into Oxala. Chainlink 1 Oxala, Chainlink 2 Gargoyle. That's going to get us our field spell. And then with the field spell, we can activate it, and the effect discarding Gargoyle to place the Primera. And then just go end phase there. Oxala can place back the Gargoyle. We literally have all 3 Centurion bodies in the back row here. So that's going to set us up for our Crimson Dragon play. We still have all 3 other cards in hand, and our opponent only drew 1 card. So they essentially replaced their Perulia, which is all good. All right, and then finally, the line for Shifter. Again, you're playing reactively to the card, so it shouldn't be an issue. And we already know this card is good into Shifter, so we'll just show you that line real quick. Starting with Ascator, obviously everything gets banished. We summon ourselves our Ant from the deck, synchro these two once again into the PP. Effect is going to grab us Emblema Oath. Then we're going to activate the Oath and place the Primera here, which is important because we are going to use our normal summon. So Primera effect to summon, Primera effect to search. We're going to search Trudea. Normal summon Trudea, Trudea effect to place itself and the Gargoyle from the deck. Effect of Gargoyle to summon as a level 4. Then synchro with the PP, of course, into Oxala. Oxala is going to get us to our field spell. We'll activate the field spell, and then in the end phase, Oxala can place back the Gargoyle. Pereira's just kind of chilling there, but we do synchro with the Gargoyle on our opponent's turn. Once again, getting to our Crimson Dragon setup. So yeah, green on the shifter for sure. Overall, it's a decent enough one-card starter, but the real power in this deck comes when we start to get into our 2-card combos. Okay, so Soul plus Bone. This is quite a different combo line compared to the original just Soul combo. Obviously, it shares some weaknesses in the fact that Bone is key, so either removing it or preventing it from hitting the field is going to stop the combo entirely, and that is done by the likes of Ogre and Impulse. Bell also kills you if you have to use Foolish to get to Bone, but other than that, you still end on at least an interruption through Bell. This combo is much more resilient though, because there isn't a clear choke point for an Ash or an Imperm. We're not tunnel visioning into the Red Rising Dragon or anything like that. So no matter where you get Veilered or Ashed, you're still going to have a couple of interruptions through that. And that's the same with Nibiru as well. You're still able to put up a couple of interruptions after getting Nibiru'd. Shifter unfortunately still cooks, and Droll is just the same as the original Soul combo, but this line is also better into the Mulcharmies. So for Fuwalos, in the original one-card Soul combo, there was actually a choke point where we just literally can't do anything through the card, and that's because the aim was to go through Red Rising Dragon. But in the Soul plus Bone combo, because we're going straight for Scarred, we're actually guaranteed interruptions through the Fuwalos this time. So that line goes like this. We normal summon the Soul, Soul effect, add the Vision Resonator, activate the effect of Bone to special summon itself, Bone effect, target Soul. Of course, we dump the UV loop and increase Soul's level to 4. And at some point, any point, doesn't really matter, Fuwalos will be activated. So we are going to synchro these two, but instead of Scarred, we're going to go into the Red Dragon Archfiend, because if we go into Scarred, who would then summon RDA from the extra deck, that's an additional draw for the opponent, and we don't want that. So our opponent gets one draw off of the Red Dragon Archfiend. We special summon Vision Resonator and synchro into Bestial Dispater. That's a second draw for the opponent on Fuwalos. That will trigger the Vision Resonator, however, grabbing us a Crimson Gaia. We'll activate the Crimson Gaia just to get a red zone, and then we can use the UV Loop Engrave, targeting the Red Dragon Archfiend. So that'll banish RDA and add itself back to hand. Then Bestial Dispater can summon the Red Dragon Archfiend, making our red zone live, and then in the end phase, RDA is going to try and wipe the field, which we will protect with Soul, therefore making the Bestial Dispater live. So we essentially have two other cards in hand, plus Red Zone and a Bestial Dispater. And then with the Perulia, because it does typically get dropped in the draw phase, we can kind of react to that and play our combo from before, but because we already have Bone in hand, we're actually able to extend it a little bit further. So we would normal summon Soul, our opponent gets a draw. Soul effect on summon, we're going to add a UV Loop here, and then we activate the effect of Bone, just discarding the UV Loop to special summon it. Our opponent gets their second draw. Now we go Bone effect, target Soul, dumping Crimson, reduce the level of Soul to 2 so that we can special summon out Red Rising. Red Rising, of course, summoning out the Crimson. Crimson effect, summoning out the Vision and the Synchron. And then Red Rising plus Vision, synchroing into the Scarred, which will trigger the Vision, of course. Adding Crimson to our hand. Scarred plus Synchron. Synchros into the Abyss, classic Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, adding back the Vision and summoning out Red Dragon Archfiend. And this time we will actually synchro into the Dispater. We didn't before, but now we can because we have the UV Loop in Graveyard enabling a couple of things. So we go UV Loop effect, target Red Dragon Archfiend to add it to the hand. Activate the Crimson Gaia, and then Crimson Gaia effect, adding Red Zone. We can set the red zone here. So we're essentially going to have 3 interruptions versus 2 draws. The Dispater is live, shuffling back the Red Dragon Archfiend. Of course, the red zone pop will be live because Crimson Gaia can then bring back Scarred. And the negate on Abyss is there as well. So definitely an upgrade to the previous combo versus Perulia. But yeah, sometimes it's just not worth giving your opponent any draws at all. Depends on whether you have hand traps in your hand or not. You can kind of make that decision on the fly. But yeah, I think it's fine to say Perulia is like green here because it is an upgrade to the previous combo where it was orange. Okay, so with Soul plus Bone, we're getting better in terms of resilience when it comes to the Red Dragon Archfiend combos. However, the non-tuner weakness is still there. This is why it's always been so important to see both engines in your hand. And this is where it starts to get juicy. So let's get into that. Alright, when we start getting into both engines, this is where we start to eliminate all of the weaknesses from the previous combos. Because it's two independent engines that combo separately from each other, there isn't a set choke point that just stops the entire combo. So if your opponent has a sort of one-for-one interruption, that's going to stop one engine, allowing you to then play with the other engine. This means regardless of whether our opponent has Impulse, or Imperm, or Ash, or Ogre, or Bell, we're still actually going to have an end board guaranteed. Also, because of the way the line is sequenced, we've set up our Centurion combo before 5 summons, so even if we do get Nibiru'd, we're still able to go through Primera into Gargoyle into a Cosmic Blazar setup, and if we don't get Nibiru'd, we essentially have our full board. Like, we didn't have to sacrifice anything off our end board to be able to play around the Nibiru. Of course, because we have access to the Centurion cards, we have options to play around the Fuwalos if it does get dropped on us at any point. Also, because we're sending Bone to the graveyard with stand-up, that means our opponent gets one less draw off of the Perulia, allowing us to go full combo with our opponent only getting one draw off of Perulia. Withdrawal, it really depends on the starters we have in hand. For example, if we have Crimson Gaia plus Terraforming, we would want to at least activate the Terraforming first, because if we have access to the Centurion stuff, we can at least put up an interruption. But then if we have like Soul plus Emblem at Oath, we're essentially going full combo. So Droll isn't a big deal, and then Shifter is where it gets a little bit awkward, because if we don't have specifically Emblem at Oath, then we can't do anything. So Shifter is orange, arguably red, but everything else is green, so we're putting our opponent into a you better have 2 hand traps kind of territory, which is also why Ascator Dawnwalker is a really nice inclusion to the deck, although there are a lot of variations in the lines depending on how you get interrupted, so we had to cook up a little bit, and yeah, there's gonna be a lot to get into, so let's get into that now. Alright, starting with the easiest of the combos, Ascator plus Bone. Of course, we have Ascator in hand. That already means that we have a playthrough Shifter, so Shifter is immediately green. Then, using the same logic as before, we are playing with 2 different engines in our hand here, of course, so the one-for-one interruptions are only going to get our opponent halfway there, but we do have options available in terms of the lines that we can go for, so let's talk about that. Okay, so obviously there's no guaranteeing where your opponent is actually going to interrupt your combo, but we are presented with options if we're stopped at a certain point. So if we go Ascator, discard Bone, summoning out itself and the Ant, and then synchro these 2 into the PP, our opponent has an opportunity to Imperm or Ash here. And so if they do that, of course, they've stopped the Centurion engine and we can continue playing with Bone, but we have options here because PP is a level 8 tuner, Bone is a level 4 non-tuner. So if we summon Bone, we could synchro these 2 into the Oxala and continue to end on the Centurion line, or we could just go for the Bone combo on its own to end on Abyss plus Dispatter. Although there will be no banished cards for Dispatter to be live, we kind of would just be relying on our opponent banishing something unless we have like a Bestial in hand. I think for specifically the Ascator plus Bone combo, it makes most sense, especially if we have like 3 hand traps in hand, for example. to activate Bone, just sending the PP to grave, and then going through the Bone effect to get to your Abyss plus Dispatter with your 3 hand traps in hand. But this specific decision is actually going to change if we, for example, have Ascator plus Vision instead of Bone, which we will be talking about in a minute. I just wanted to visually present you with that decision there. With Droll, of course, we can just resort back to the earlier Ascator combo where we end on the full Centurion setup. Nibiru is also green this time, however, because we're going through Ascator setting up a Cosmic Blazar to insulate the rest of our Red Dragon Archfiend plays, so they have to Nibiru before we access the Red Dragon Archfiend line, meaning if we do get Nibiru'd, we then end on the Abyss plus Dispatter. Finally, with the Mulcharmies, Bone Archfiend really isn't changing the Ascator combo into those cards. So same as before, Perulia is green, and Fuwalos is letting the team down here with a mid-orange. Now, Ascator plus Vision. You might think we can apply all of the same logic as before, but that's not the case. It's the same logic for Shifter and the Mulcharmies, however, Droll actually hard counters this 2-card combo. That's a bit of a bold statement, actually, because you can play around the Droll, but then you would be playing into any other interruption, so it's like pick your poison. Nibiru is also a hard counter at a very specific point. So on your 5th summon, when you have Gargoyle and PP on the field, if you get Nibiru'd there in this specific 2-card combo, you can't do much through that. If you get Nibiru'd at literally any other point, you're fine though, so I doubt people are gonna know the exact point to Nibiru, and therefore it's gonna be orange instead of red. Okay, now this is where the sort of interruptions start to make our lines a little bit more interesting. So starting with the Ascator, of course, discarding the Vision to special summon itself and the Ant from the deck. That is going to trigger the Vision, grabbing our Crimson Gaia. We then synchro these two into the PP, and PP gets hit with an Ash or an Imperm here. So the next logical step is obviously activate Crimson Gaia effect to add Soul from the deck. And naturally, you're going to want to normal summon Soul, Soul effect add Bone, and the Red Dragon Archfiend player inside you probably wants to go Bone effect, send PP to grave, and then go through a Red Rising play, but that's literally illegal because we've already summoned a non-Dark Dragon Synchro monster. So what we have to do, and in the effort of conserving our cards in hand here, our hand traps, we will activate the effect of Bone, sending Crimson Gaia to special summon itself, and then Bone effect targets Soul. So we're going to reduce Soul's level to 2, and we're going to dump a UV loop to the graveyard, meaning Bone is still level 4 here, thankfully, and we can synchro it with the PP into Centurion Oxala. Oxala's effect will trigger, adding ourselves a copy of Stand Up. Then we can activate the Stand Up, and again, in the effort of saving our hand traps here, we can activate the UV loop effect in grave, banishing the Primera Primus to add itself to hand, and then Stand Up effect, discarding the UV loop back to graveyard because we can't actually find a use for the body in this combo line. But yeah, that is going to place the Trudea. Trudea effect to summon, Trudea effect to place itself plus Primera, Primera effect to summon, and Primera effect to search for the Gargoyle here. We'll activate the effect of Gargoyle, sending Primera to the graveyard, summon out the level 8 body that we can synchro with the Soul to make our Bestial Dispatcher. That's going to trigger the Gargoyle to come back to hand here. And then in the end phase, Oxala is going to place back the Primera. So we have a live Dispatcher with the Primera Primus being banished on top of the 3 cards in hand and the Centurion lineup in the back row as well, getting us to a potential Supernova or Cosmic Blazar, which is better than the Bone combo just having the Abyss live. Yeah, definitely a really nice line that we had to cook up there. So we're generally okay into interruptions. Like if you get Ashtar Impulsed on Ascator activating in hand discarding Vision, you then have your full Red Dragon Archfiend combo available to you with Crimson Resonator. Bell and Ogre aren't super impactful either. However, Imperm or Veiler or Mourner on specifically Oxala is quite damaging to our combo because we're then only able to end on a live Dispater and a Crimson Gaia with Scarred, which isn't an interruption. Alright, let me just kind of show you what I mean by Imperm actually hurting our combo. So Ascator discarding Vision, it's going to special summon itself out again here with the Ant. Vision will grab us a Crimson Gaia. We'll synchro those two into the PP. Effect of PP is going to grab us Emblem of Oath from the deck. Obviously, deck's over here, but this is all the cards that are going to be used here. We activate Oath to place Trudea. Trudea to summon, Trudea to place itself and Gargoyle. Gargoyle to summon as a 4, and then we synchro into the Oxala. Chainlink 1 Oxala, Chainlink 2 Gargoyle, and then Chainlink 3 Veiler or Mourner or Imperm. You know, we don't get access to the field spell, so we're not going to be able to use the Centurion stuff on our opponent's turn, which is like a big deal because our Red Dragon Archfiend combos are also limited due to the fact that we had to go through Vision to get to the Gaia to access the line. But yeah, we would have to go Crimson Gaia effect, add Soul. Normal summon Soul, Soul effect, add Bone Archfiend. And then we'll go Bone Archfiend effect, send Trudea to the graveyard to break the Centurion lock from Emblem of Oath. And then Bone effect, target Soul, dumping UV Loop, reducing its level to 2. And then we can go Gargoyle effect, send Oxala to grave to summon from hand for the level 8 body, to synchro with Soul into the Bestial Dispater. From here, we would then go UV Loop effect, banishing the Oxala to add itself to hand, UV Loop effect, banishing the PP to summon itself from hand, and then synchro with the Boner to make Scarred. So Scarred plus Crimson Gaia is like a decent survival option because Scarred summons Red Dragon Archfiend and gets summoned back by the Crimson Gaia. But also we can go Bestial Dispater, summon out the Oxala. So we have a wall of bodies. End phase Oxala can place the Trudea, giving us follow-up on the next turn because Primera is still in the deck. So we can use Trudea to then place Primera and get access to the field spell again that way. But yeah, our only actual interruption here is the Dispater pop, shuffling back the Primera Primus and our 3 cards in hand. So it's not like the end of the world. Our opponent still has to do a lot to kill us on their turn. But yeah, it's definitely stinted the amount of interruptions we're able to put up, unfortunately, which is why Imperm is orange here. Alright, the final Ascator combo we have here is Ascator plus Soul, and a lot of the same logic is going to apply again. I don't really want to repeat myself too much. Compared to the Ascator plus Vision combo, this one doesn't actually lose to draw, so we're chilling there. However, it does share the same kind of weakness with Imperm on Oxala. This time, we have the option of setting up a Dispater or a Red Zone, so it's at least a little bit more flexible in that sense. And when it comes to Nibiru, we actually don't have the 5-summon choke point anymore. Alright, so for the Nibiru line in Ascator plus Soul, I know it's another new combo line, dude. There's so many weird lines that we've had to cook up here. But yeah, we'll go Ascator, discarding a card to summon out itself and the Ant. Synchro these two into the PP, Little Miss PP. Effect, adding Emblem of Oath. We activate Emblem of Oath, placing the Trudea. Trudea effect to summon, that's 4th summon. Trudea effect to place itself and Gargoyle, and then Gargoyle effect to summon as a level 4. That's summon number 5, and realistically, like if you discard a Vision Resonator, your opponent knows you have Crimson Gaia in hand. Nobody's gonna want to Nibiru here, right? But this is the hard choke point in the Vision combo because there's no way to extend anywhere. Like, you're locked out of Red Rising Dragon and you're unable to put up an interruption. The reason that's a choke point in the Vision combo is that you have to use Gaia to get to Soul. Whereas if you start with Soul instead of Vision, you can use Gaia to search something else, and that gives us options to set up interruptions through Nibiru. So, like I said, any other point getting Nibiru'd doesn't really matter, but here is the choke point in the Vision combo, and here is how we play around it or through it in the Soul combo. So let's imagine we get Nibiru'd here. Let's find a token somewhere. There we go. We would then normal summon Soul. Soul effect, add Bone to the hand. We'll go Bone effect, send the Trudea to the graveyard to break the Emblema Oath lock. And then Bone effect, target the token, dumping Vision Resonator to reduce the token from level 11 to level 10. And then Vision effect is going to grab us a Crimson Gaia. We'll activate the Crimson Gaia and the effect of Crimson Gaia, returning Vision from the graveyard to the hand here. We don't really want to search out the second copy from the deck because that may be required for follow-up at some point. We're then going to synchro the Soul with the Bone Archfiend, 3+4 into the Q-Belt, giving us a 5 or higher Dark on the field, so we can then special summon the Vision Resonator and synchro with the token into Centurion Oxala. I just love synchroing with the Nibiru token. It's so funny every time. Yeah, Oxala effect is going to grab a stand-up Centurion, and then we can activate the stand-up Centurion, discard another card to place the Primera here. There's not really any point in summoning Primera on our turn unless we were playing Phalanx, so we just leave it there, go to the end phase, and Oxala would place back the Gargoyle. We also have PP set up in Graveyard as well. But yeah, through the Nibiru on the choke point, we're still able to end on the Centurion lineup. And we have a card in hand as well. And Q-Belt has a secret Graveyard effect. So we're still chilling. We're still chilling through Nibiru in the Soul combo. Alright, this final combo is like a little bonus because the idea of this kind of video is that we want to take a step back, see all the combos available to us and what they're weak to, and then use that information when it comes to building our deck and adapting it to a certain format. And if you draw a hand like this, your first reaction is like, oh great, okay, Sweeper, Search Soul, Normal Summon Soul, if I get stopped on Soul, I just lose. That's not actually the case, and the reason I'm showing you this is not only that this hand can play through like an Ash, but also it can play through Shifter. And that's one of the main weaknesses I want to kind of know all the ins and outs of going forward, and this is one of the outs to Shifter. We're going to start with Stone Sweeper effect. This can banish itself. It just has to discard itself. It doesn't have to go to graveyard. So under Shifter, this is fine. To add Vision Resonator. And then any Bestial in hand can target the Dimension Shifter because it's a Dark and Graveyard, right? I'm going to show you the full combo assuming we're not under Shifter, but I'm also going to explain how it works under Shifter. So let's pretend Stone Sweeper's in Graveyard. We haven't been Shifted, we Druid Worm, target Stone Sweeper. If we have been Shifted, we Druid Worm, target the Shifter. But yeah, special summon out the Druid Worm, then we're able to special summon out the Vision Resonator, and then we can synchro these two into Primera Primus, Chainlink 1 Primera, Chainlink 2 Vision because it got sent to the graveyard to add Crimson Gaia, although assuming we were under Shifter, it would be banished. We can't activate Vision. However, Primera Primus gets us to Emblema Oath, and then it's essentially just the Ascator combo through Shifter. So we get the full Centurion setup, assuming we were under Shifter here, but playing out the full combo, assuming we're not under Shifter, yeah, Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, we add Crimson Gaia and Emblema Oath. Activate Emblema Oath, it's essentially just now turned into the Ascator plus Vision combo. So we went from a potential 1 engine lose to 1 hand trap hand to both engines lose to a lot less hand traps. Yeah, Emblema Oath placing the Trudea. Trudea effect to summon. Trudea effect to place itself in Gargoyle. Wait, that's not Gargoyle. Oh yeah, Gargoyle's in hand because I felt like including some bricks in the hand, yeah. Okay, Gargoyle effect to summon as a level 4. Trudea can place from hand, by the way. That's why that was a thing. But yeah, Gargoyle plus Primera Primus into the Oxala, chain 1 Oxala, chain 2 Gargoyle, comes back to hand, and we grab a stand-up. We activate stand-up and the effect, sending our little ant brick to the graveyard to place Primera. Primera effect to summon, Primera effect to search, another stand-up, and then we go Gargoyle effect, send Judea to the graveyard to summon itself out again from the hand this time, allowing us to then go Crimson Dragon effect, target the Oxala, to bring out the Cosmic Blazar, and then we're free to go into our Red Dragon Archfiend line, Crimson Gaia, add Soul, normal summon Soul effect, add Bone, Bone effect, send the additional stand up to the graveyard to special summon itself, and effect, target Soul, dumping a UV loop, reducing Soul's level to 2, then we go UV loop effect engrave, banishing the PP to add itself back, and then effect in hand, banishing the Oxala to special summon itself out. Synchroing with the Bone, we make Scarred, and then Scarred plus the level 2 Soul. We go into a Dispatter, which will trigger the Scarred, summoning out the original RDA. Dispatter brings out our banished Oxala, who is then in the end phase, going to place Primera, giving us the full Ascator plus Vision end board. But the fact that just with a Bestial, pretty much, you can also play through Shifter, it's 100% worth knowing, man. When it comes to putting this combo up against interruptions, it's very complicated. With this specific 2-card combo and nothing else in hand, you are going to lose to an Ash on the Stone Sweeper, but ashing Stone Sweeper typically isn't correct. That's kind of like a common theme for most of the interruptions here. For example, if you bell the Bestial in this combo, I'm cooked. If you don't bell the Bestial, I'm chilling. If you Nibiru me on exactly 5 summons where I have 2 monsters on field, I'm cooked. But if you don't, I'm chilling. Same with using Impulse on the Bestial, that would cook it, but if you don't Impulse the Bestial, then Impulse isn't going to be enough. Ogre's the only one that we don't have the potential to immediately lose to, however, Droll does also cook this on resolution of Stone Sweeper. So on paper, it looks a lot worse than it is, but it is an option we can play into Shifter, which is definitely worth knowing. Alright, super long video, but might as well end it on some test hands and see if anything interesting comes up. I don't know exactly what deck list this is, but there's some Bestials and whatnot in here, more so than I usually play. We're just cooking, testing some things out. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. We'll do like 3 test hands, see how many hand traps we can play through. So yeah, first hand, we have Soul, Imperm, Stand Up, Red Zone, and UV Loop. So right off the bat, we know that we're like immediately able to play through at least 1 hand trap. We did draw 2 bricks slash 1-ofs, but it's actually not that big of a deal. We would, of course, start with the Soul Resonator here to try and get Bone Archfiend for discard fodder on the stand-up Centurion, although we can also just discard the Red Zone because we can add it back from the graveyard later with Crimson Gaia. But yeah, if Soul resolves, we add Bone. If it doesn't resolve, we go for the Centurion line. I guess the question here is like, what's the goal of doing test hands in the video? Like, am I going uninterrupted, or am I assuming I get interrupted everywhere? Let's okay, let's assume we get impermed on Soul, which is, you know, quite standard. So we go Stand Up. And if our opponent has no further interruptions, Red Zone is actually going to improve our end board on the Centurion line because it gives us the option to go for a double Supernova. So we would send UV Loop to the graveyard here for Stand Up Centurion, and we would, of course, place the Trudea. Trudea effect to summon. We would always summon it as a level 4 because if Trudea did get impermed here, we would just set our 2 back row, pass turn, and we actually still have 2 interruptions through 2 hand traps because imperm obviously being 1, but if our opponent special summons a monster, we can activate our field spell and synchro into Quibelt to target a card on the field and destroy it. However, let's assume Trudea doesn't get impermed. So Trudea effect, place itself and the Primera from the deck. Boom, Primera effect to summon, Primera effect to search, adding, of course, the Gargoyle. Next up, we, of course, go Gargoyle effect to summon. Now, we actually have options here. We could send the field spell to summon Gargoyle and then make an Oxala to grab another field spell. Or we can keep the field spell up, send the Trudea to make a Legatia, and then Legatia would draw a card instead of searching another field spell. But then in the end phase, we would only have 1 Centurion body in the back row, meaning our only option would be to interrupt our opponent with a Quibelt. So yeah, definitely sending the field spell here for the Gargoyle. Gargoyle plus Primera. We're going to go into the Centurion Oxala. Chainlink 1 Oxala, Chainlink 2 Gargoyle is going to come back to hand. We're going to grab another field spell, of course. Activate the field spell, set our 2 back row, end phase. Oxala is going to place Primera, and we pass turn. Pretty winnable hand, pretty winnable game state, assuming we get interrupted once. Even if we get interrupted twice, we still have a couple of interruptions to set up. So good test hand, solid test hand, good deck. Red Dragon Archfiend, baby, let's go. All right, test hand number 2. What are we going to get? What are we going to get? Come on, 5 bricks, let's go. Crimson Gaia, pretty good. Terraforming, Ogre, Vision, and Emblem of Oath. Okay, we got some redundancy in here. That's very nice. We can definitely play through a few hand traps with this. I think we're always going to start off with the Terraforming here, because if we do get drolled, we still have both Centurion starters, meaning if we get stopped on 1 Centurion card, we can continue playing through an additional interruption. But yeah, definitely Terraforming to begin with here. Adding a stand-up, and then from here, we probably start with the Gaia. If we get Fuwalos or Perulia, we're still totally fine. We have the Centurion lineup, and we have at least 1 hand trap, even if it is just Ogre. Yeah, we'll play it out, see what happens. So Crimson Gaia effect, we're always going to add Soul here. If that got Ogred, doesn't really matter. We have the Centurion lineup. So we grab Soul, normal summon Soul, See if it gets impermed. Let's imagine, once again, they imperm Soul. Okay. They know we have stand up. That's fine. So we activate stand up. We activate the effect. We would discard the vision here to place the Trudea. And then that's going to trigger vision. We already have access to Gaia. So vision is going to get us to our red zone. Then we go effect of Trudea to summon itself as a level 4 again. And we go effect to place itself. Let's assume our opponent waits for the Synchro Monster to imperm that. So Trudea places itself. We are going to place the Primera Being. Primera effect to summon. And Primera effect to search. We would be adding the Gargoyle. And then Gargoyle effect, send a field spell to special summon itself and synchro with the Primera. We make the Oxala. Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2, Gargoyle. Let's say we get impermed again on the Oxala, so we're not going to be able to get another Centurion body in the back row. We can at least Oath to set another field spell. Activate the field spell. Red zone isn't really going to be doing anything. We can't get another Centurion in the back row. So we pass here. But fortunately, we do still have the Soul plus Trudea into the Quibelt line for an interruption. And we also have the Ghost Ogre. So that's, again, through double imperm, 2 interruptions. Very solid hand again. Like, I don't think there was anything that hand lost to specifically. Even Shifter, we had Emblem of Oath. Let's do one more test hand. Let's assume our opponent has Nibiru and Ghost Ogre. Okay, Nibiru, Ghost Ogre, and then we'll draw 5 cards. Ash, Gaia, Magna, and Soul. Oh boy. Okay, what did we say? Nibiru plus Ghost Ogre? Okay, let's try and find a way to make this work. We would start by activating Gaia and go Gaia effect. Does that get ogred? Let's flip a coin. That's heads. That's tails. Let's say heads, our opponent ogres a Gaia. Tails, they don't. Tails, okay, they don't ogre Gaia. Great, so Gaia resolves. We add a Vision Resonator. They're saving their ogre for a more pivotal point. We then normal summon Soul. Soul effect. Ah, they're saving ogre for Bone, of course, of course. Okay, Soul, add Bone. We're on 2 summons now. Bone effect. Sending Gaia to grave to special summon itself. That's summon number 2. Then we go Bone effect, target Soul. Our opponent most definitely chains Ogre here, okay? But the Bone does still resolve. So we dump we have a Magna. We can make Soul level 4. Summon back Bone, summon Vision. Oh, dude. Oh, this is cool, okay. Yeah, so we'll just, we'll dump the UV loop here. And we're actually gonna decrease Soul's level to 2. Then from here, we'll activate Magna, targeting the Bone Archfiend to special summon itself. Magna effect on summon, so we're actually going to get a Bestial in the end phase, which is a free interruption. You'll have to see it. 6 plus 2. That's 1, 2, 3 summons. We're going into summon number 4 here. The non-tuner has to be a dark monster, which is fine. We summon Scarred, and then we can special summon Vision Resonator. We'll do a coin toss on every summon from 5 onwards to see if we get Nibiru. So heads, our opponent activates Nibiru. Tails, okay, we don't get Nibiru here. That's cool. We synchro these 2 into Bestial Dispatter. Chainlink 1 Scarred, Chainlink 2 Vision. Vision is going to add Red Zone to our hand, and then Scarred is going to summon out Red Dragon Archfiend. Do we get Nibiru here? Heads? If yes. Tails again. Okay, we don't get Nibiru. Cool. We would go UV Loop effect, target Scarred to add itself to hand. We'll go Dispatter, target Scarred to summon it back. Then we'll go UV Loop, target Red Dragon Archfiend. Banish this to special summon it. We are threatening Oxala here. So do we get Nibiru? Yes or no? Heads. Okay, there we go. We get Nibiru. Sure, why not? Big Nibiru token. So that's an Ogre down and a Nibiru down. We can set the red zone and we would just proceed to the end phase there. Resolve Magna. Probably adding a Druis Worm here. Oh, or we could go Baldrake. Yeah, Baldrake's like an additional interruption that we can trigger when we want. Bro, we somehow ended on 3 interruptions because we have Baldrake. No, 4 interruptions, dude. Ash, Baldrake, assuming they're on a light or dark deck. We have Red Zone, bring back RDA, and then the pop is live. And then the effect on Baldrake is also live. Plus Gaia, we'd bring back like Scarred. Yeah, dude, we're big chillin'. Oh my god, okay. That was nice. That was nice. Although that hand did lose to like an imperm.
Yeah, very long, rambly video, and obviously you can't have every interaction at every different point against every single combo, otherwise you'd be here for days, man. But I do think we tackled most of the common situations in this video. If you have any questions or if anything specific comes up, just let me know and I'll answer it in the comments. But yeah, thanks for watching. The YCS grind starts now, again.